Hey everybody, Joseph here. Today I want to have a little rant about my wife's doctors, about her ophthalmologist and her endocrinologist, um, and probably about ophthalmologists and endocrinologists in general. Uh, she has type 1 diabetes and she's had it for over 50 years. And the first 30 years, she pretty much coasted on her own. You know, she did get her prescriptions from her primary for her needles and her test strips, but she used NPH insulin for like 30 years. And in the early 2000s, she had the first signs of retinopathy. She started having some eye bleeds. So this was the first time, it was around 2004, 2005, her primary finally sent her to an endocrinologist and an ophthalmologist. And the ophthalmologist, the first thing he wanted to do with her retinopathy was to give her laser zaps to the back of the eye to try and cauterize the veins in the eye. Um, so that's where that started. And I don't know how long after that, when that first started, did they finally talk her into doing eye injections. But over a course of 11 years, from 2005 to 2016, she did thousands of laser zaps to the point where it was around 2015, 2016 that her ophthalmologist finally said, you know, I've cauterized everything and there's nothing more I can do. Um, but during this time, they gave her a lot of eye injections. Uh, it's somewhere between a dozen and two dozen eye injections over this 11 years. And the last eye injection she had in 2016, it was right after that, she had a detached retina. And I went online trying to figure out what would cause that, and it seemed like all roads led to those injections. Don't know for a fact, just, believe it did. Um, so after they reattached the retina, which, when you reattach a retina, it's not the same. In that eye to this day, she says she looks out, it looks like she's looking at a funhouse mirror. Where the other eye, she said it looks more like a dirty window. She has starbursts, floaters, distortion. She's legally blind. She can't drive. So this is what she still is going through to this day. Now in 2016, after the detachment, she told her ophthalmologist, no more injections. I don't want no more. And he got upset. He got upset and he excused himself from the room, left. The nurse came in and she said, the doctor is not going to see you no more. We're going to hand you to another ophthalmologist in our group. And my wife was just stunned, all because she refused eye injections. And that just made him angry. He treated her for 11 years and he dumped her like a bad habit because of this. Now, was it because they make a lot of money on these eye injections, which they do? Or did he just take it personal? I don't know. But so she did stop these procedures cold turkey. And so for the next, about 6 years, she continued to have eye bleeds. And she wasn't treating them no more. So around 2000, I started a diet. I started losing weight. And after my initial weight loss with this rice diet, I then started cutting out processed foods and ultra processed foods. And she jumped on board with that. And that was from like 2020 to 2022. And she noticed a slight decrease in her eye bleeds during this time. So then in 2022, she found keto and she wanted to try that. And she did that for a good year. And she noticed, you know, no eye bleeds. Her A1C was finally dropping. We were always on the standard American diet. She never was a big sweet eater, but she ate a lot of carbohydrates. She'd eat breads, she'd eat pasta, sometimes chips, and sometimes crackers, stuff like that. She wasn't a candy person or cakes or pies, nothing like that. She thought she was, being in control by staying away from the sweets, but she didn't give much thought to carbohydrates because her endocrinologist, who she got at the same time as the ophthalmologist in 2005, he never talked to her about carbohydrates. He only ever told her, and she's had three uh, endocrinologists since then, and they've all pretty much said the same thing. Watch your sugars. If you want to lose weight, count your calories, but watch your sugars. But they don't tell you how to watch your sugars. They don't tell you about carbohydrates. They don't really talk about carbohydrates. They do tell them, and she's been told this many times, if you have too many carbohydrates, too much sugar, take more insulin. That's their answer. Take more insulin. Um, and she kind of went by that for like, 40 years. If I eat a big pasta meal, I just have to take more insulin, because that's what my doctor's telling me. And they also always told her she needs carbs. You got to have carbs in your diet. And when you look at the American Diabetes Association, they recommend carbs. So when in 2022, when she adopted the keto diet, she noticed her A1C finally dropping, and it dropped. I think around 2019, she was like in the low nines, and slowly she just went down. When we got on, dropped the ultra process, went down into the eights. When she went on keto, she went down into the sevens, and then in 2023, I adopted the carnivore ketovore way of eating, and she jumped on board too. So in the past 3 years, her A1C is now dropped. It hovers around between 5.8 and 6. And in the last 3 years, she's only had one eye bleed. She's had some really minor ones that she said only last a few hours, where some of these used to last for a week and a half. But one noticeable one she had in the past 3 years. So she went from what, 17 years or longer, 18 years of eye bleeds. I mean, some really bad eye bleeds. And the only thing the doctors, these endocrinologists and the ophthalmologists ever did for her was tell her to watch her sugars, didn't give her no guidelines, didn't tell her how to eat, what to eat, and told her if she wanted to lose weight, count some calories. Um, and the ophthalmologists, all they ever did was basically butcher her eyes. Uh, they did the zaps and the needles, which caused, we believe, the detachment. And all they ever had to do at the beginning when she first saw them was, if they had said, before we go this route of zapping your eyes and giving you eye injections, why don't you try reducing your sugars by reducing your carbs, carbohydrates? Why don't you try a more protein diet? Try that first. And if you don't do that, and if it just persists, then we'll go the route of the zapping of the eye and the injections. That was never said to her. And granted, just because if that was presented to people doesn't mean they're actually going to do it. We like to think we would have done it, but we don't know. But it was never presented, so we never had that option. And no one ever really educated her on carbohydrates. Just watch your sugars. And we all know carbohydrates turn to sugar. You think you're not eating the cakes and pies and candies, but you're eating potatoes and chips and pasta. And you think, oh, wow, I'm also going to eat complex carbs. Well, complex carbs turn to sugar, just at a slower rate. But we were uneducated, and wasn't a whole lot of resources to find out good information 20 years ago. There was the internet, but even the internet was sketchy. Not a whole lot of good stuff was on there. YouTube, wasn't around until I think 2005, and it took a good decade for people to really start posting some good stuff on YouTube. And even then, it was kind of sparse about 10 years ago. We didn't start really finding stuff on YouTube till 2020, 2021, how to treat certain things. And late, in these past few years, it's been a great resource of ways to get healthier. You have to take a lot of it with a grain of salt. It's all got to test it, see if it works for you. Not everything works for you. It doesn't work, you move on to the next thing. And we've tested a lot of things, and reducing our carbohydrates has really helped us, especially her as a type 1 diabetic of over 50 years. So she's only had one eye bleed in the past 3 years. But has it reversed any of her retinopathy? We don't think so. I mean, I find stuff online that says if you if a person with retinopathy lays off the sugars, carbs for 5 years, the veins in the eyes can sprout out and regrow and reconnect to other ones and create new paths to regenerate the eyes. I don't know how true that is, but we haven't seen it yet. But, you know, to reduce your carbohydrates reduces not just your sugars, but when you reduce your carbs and your sugars, you reduce all the inflammation in your body. And those three things are what cause most of our chronic illnesses today. And nobody tells you that. Nobody teaches that. When my wife in 2016, after her retina detached, she finally was offered the pump. And she hemmed and hawed, but she went ahead and got on the pump. She was a little hesitant of trying to learn this little mini computer. And then, I have to help her with it because she can't see it very well. But it turned into a godsend. And then a few years later, she finally got a glucometer instead of test strips. Oh, we hated test strips. She hated doing test strips. They were pricey, and she just hated pricking her fingers. But once she got the glucometer and learned that was a game changer. She could really keep an eye on her sugars. And especially in these last 3 years, she even learned how about almost 2 years ago, I sent her some videos on how to change your basal. So anybody who has a pump, you're taking it to your endocrinologist, you have a pump clinic, and they like to change your basal. Well, you can do that yourself. You just have to learn how to do it. And she does. She puts her basal where she thinks she needs it, where her blood sugars won't go low while she sleeps. She does have the alarm that sets it off, but she can set her basal. Plus, she's in full control of her pump, and so this has made a world of difference with the diet, with her in control of everything, with her constantly monitoring her sugars. Um, she went to a pump clinic at the endocrinologist, and when she hit the 5.8, the endocrinologist took the credit. He walked out of the room with her pump, and he showed some people. He goes, "Look what I did for her." He didn't do nothing. She did it all. But when she told him what she was doing, he just went in one ear out the other. He's just like, well, I'll see you next time. I got other patients to get to. So he wasn't interested. She wanted him to know so he could tell other patients, but he wasn't interested. So, vital information he could have told other people that could have helped them, but he didn't. Um, but also during that pump clinic, there was two technicians there for the pump that take all the numbers and everything. And when she was telling the doctor about the low carbohydrate diet, one technician said, you need carbohydrates to live. And my wife looked at her and she said, no, I don't. And then the other tech chimed in and said, yes, you need your carbohydrates. My wife turned to that technician and said, no, you don't. So that's the mindset they have. Even when you look at a lot of uh, stuff from, like I said, the American Diabetes Association, they got a lot of carbs on that plate. It's usually, I think it's about a quarter or a third protein now. But there's still a lot of carbs. They'll say the complex carbs, and they got some fruit. Um, where our plates look like 80, 90% protein with maybe a little bit of carbs. Maybe. A lot of times I just eat carnivore where there's no carbs. Uh, so it's just a shame that the medical community does not, push a way to alleviate, to prevent retinopathy, or if you get it, to you know uh, bring it down to a level where it's not going to blind you, where you don't need these laser zaps and these injections in your eyeball, sticking a needle in your eyeball and zapping the back of your eye. I mean, it's barbaric, but it's just not the world we live in. So sadly we have to search for ourselves. And luckily there are doctors online like Dr. Barry and Dr. Sean Baker and plenty of other ones, Dr. Eckberg. They are doctors, but I don't think they're in their medical groups anymore because uh, they're not they're not pushing the pills and selling the surgeries. They're trying to actually heal people, trying to you know create preventive holistic medicines and ideas and diets. And the old saying goes, There has never been a pill or a medication, and there never will be a pill or a medication that will fix a bad diet. The only thing that fixes a bad diet is a good diet. And that's it. You know, I mean, when you go back to when I was a kid, back in the late 60s, throughout the 70s, or even early 80s, we didn't have an obesity epidemic. We didn't have coffee shops that put 6 to 9 shots of syrup in your coffee. That didn't exist. If you went to fast food, it was a treat. You know, maybe we went a couple times a month. Now it's a necessity for many people. So it's, you know, we're not taught what we need to be taught. And now young people, from what I understand now, are getting type 2 diabetes as a child, children and teens. So what's their health outlook 20, 30, 40 years from now? Uh, are they going to start having debilitated illnesses, health issues in their 30s, late 30s, early 40s? You know, where are we heading if we're not eating right? And eating right, people want to sell you on low-fat diets. Well, you need fat. Got to have fat. Good fat is good for you. It's good for the brain. It, you know, it's sugar that's bad. It's carbs that turn to sugar that's bad. This is what causes the inflammation. This is what scars your arteries, where uh, where cholesterol has to come in and patch it up like spackle. It's because of the sugar and the carbs. And like, if there's a doctor, he just passed away. His name is Richard K. Bernstein. Great doctor, type 1 diabetic for 78 years. He just died in April. He would have been 91 in June. And he recommended 30 grams of carbohydrates a day. And you know what? That's a nice little amount. I mean, you can not do hardly any damage with that amount of carbohydrates. But if you do indulge once in a while, if you do up that once in a while, uh, you're going to be a million times better than if you continued on the path that everyone's on the day, eating hundreds and hundreds of carbohydrates a day, if not 1,000 sometimes, of all the sugars and sweets and breads and ultra processed foods. It's just, we're going down a rabbit hole that I don't know how we're going to come out of. Um, you know, I think we're worried about too many small things like food coloring. That may be something we should worry about, but it's the sugars. It's the sugars, sugars, sugars. You know, it's you know, as I say, it's the economy stupid. Well, it's the sugars stupid. That's what's doing all the harm, or most of the harm, in our bodies with our health today. But you know, they say that uh, there's no money in prevention. There's no money in healing, uh, but there's tons of money in treatments. And sadly, you know, that's probably the case. That's where we stand today. Um, Anyways, that's my rant. I hope I didn't bore anybody. So if for you young people out there, I suggest that you seriously look into reducing your carbohydrates and sugars, because uh, 20, 30 years, you're going to hit it like a wall. You're going to slam right into it. It's going to come fast and furious. And you're going to look back and you're going to wonder, why did I eat so much bad stuff? If I had just reduced it, you know, you could stretch out your life so much, the healthy life so much longer. So that's my 2 cents. So my rant is over. So I appreciate everyone checking in, and I hope you stop in again. And I will see you next time. Take care.